Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mercatani. Our podcast is made possible by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and sponsored by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded wrestling gear. It's my pleasure to be joined by Mr. Greco, the manager of Greco-Roman programs for United States Wrestling, Coach Gary Mayabb. Welcome back, Coach.
Hey, thanks a lot, Dave. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I know you've been traveling a lot. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
I talked to you about the trials, and we're going to get into some specifics there.
Okay.
But I just wanted to talk to you about where Greco-Roman, the state of Greco-Roman in the United States right now. So you've been at this job for a couple of years. Where were we as a country when you started, and where are we now?
Well, I think the needle continues to move right now in a positive direction, but it's because of all the volunteers. I mean, as you know, USA Wrestling's built and based on volunteerism. And with US Grit right now, we've got 65 coaches across the country that's divided into regions, and we've got that started. That project's been about 1.5 years in the making right now, and we've been up and going for the last 11 months. And so with Grit. And so we started out with 14 coaches in the 2 per region. And then plus we have a women's side of it to advance for future parts, right? And
Yep.
then we moved on and we doubled that, and we went to 28, and then we went to 56, and now we're currently at 65, and we're about to bring the states on, which will be 4 per state. So that'd take us to about 210 with what we've got up right now. So a lot of stuff, and what that's doing is we use the Greco as an acronym. So it's grow, recruit, educate, connect, and then output or overcome. And so those are the 5 areas that we're working really hard on. And so those first 4, the grow and the recruit part, we've been really working hard on that. And just this morning, I'm coming up to last night I was in at Grandview University working with Grant and the guys there, APS. And so did a Greco workout with their team there at Grandview, and that went awesome. We had a blast. And and now, and then come up this morning and had a lot of calls on the way and so much of the connecting parts. And so those are things that I actively see as advancements, right?
Yeah.
Now, when will they show up? Well, we know that we're governed and determined by performance at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, we all are in every walk of life.
In 2019 with our juniors, we had the best junior tournament that we've had. So development's good. But at the same point in time, 2019 cadets, we really felt we had a great team and we had great coaches, just a lot of really positive things. And it didn't show up as we wanted it to. So, this weekend is super important because now we're at the starting point of getting that team. And we've got plans to have 3 different camps this time and get more time with those athletes. I mean, last time we literally had 29 days from the time we got the team to the time we left. And so that made it very challenging, but that doesn't matter. Everybody had to do it. So we've got to get better in that area. And I really feel that we're more ready to take that on based on the connections that we have across the country and coaches working together actively for their athletes. So we always try to base it on those 3 things. I mean, we want to be coach driven, we want to be athlete centered, and then we want to be clubs based. So long answer, but that's where it is.
No. So you mentioned GRIT. What is that an acronym? And if so, what is it for?
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But we go by US Grit, so United States Greco-Roman Innovation Team.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do is innovate. And right now, I mean, we work directly with 2 sides of education. So it's all based on that middle of Greco is educate, right?
Yeah.
And so Mike Clayton, and director of Coaches Ed for the United States, for USAW, he is on this. He's been on every call. He is active on every call. And then he has started several initiatives. One of them that's coming up that's fall is going to be a Greco-Roman OEP for officials linked to Greco-Roman Coaches Silver College. We've never done
Oh,
it before. And we're
yeah.
also going to link part of it with some women's coaches that's going to come in for that. So they can build off and do their own freestyle one after that. But we're going to introduce hand fighting and some stuff like that we can cross over, transitional skills, right? And
Yeah,
so
for sure.
we're really excited about that. And Mike's, every step of the way, he's just added stuff to what we're doing and how we're doing it. And then on the other side, we've got the director of education for UWW, Zach Garrett, and he's a member of GRIT. So he puts in all the time. And so we got all of the GRIT members to be part of UWW's Education Academy. And so there's a lot of things like that we're doing. At the end of the day, what GRIT is really supposed to do is to create and provide domestic training environments that focus on the opportunities to internationally podium young athletes. And, Fargo is Fargo, and it's coming into its 50th year for freestyle this year.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be a great big celebration. USAW is going to do it right. And there's so many positive pieces to that. But having said that, Greco now, now that it goes last, that's been a huge shot in the arm for us of late. And so
people stay. Yeah,
exactly.
Because the other time people were like, I don't want to burn out and wrestle a bunch of matches and not be fresh for freestyle.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure.
No, and what changed is the first year our numbers were pretty good, but the second year what we found was we were having up to, in several brackets, 12 out of the top 15. So it wasn't just numbers, it was the right numbers, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty
and quantity. Yeah, for sure.
There you go.
Yep. And just so people know, the tournament you're talking about is the Dells this weekend, where there's a bunch of age group kids in all styles.
Pan Am.
Yeah.
And will be determined through both styles and in a number system, number ranking. And then on the other side of it, cadet world team is up for grabs this weekend, as well as Pan Am at cadet. So a lot on the line this weekend.
Well, I was at the Olympic trials. I actually did map 3. You and I talked about this, and we're going to get to that. I had a conversation, I'll call it a slight disagreement, with somebody about how popular Greco-Roman wrestling is worldwide. And I think you can probably imagine which side of the argument I was on. Right. Okay. But
appreciate that.
Yeah. As somebody who's traveled all over the world for wrestling, how popular is Greco when you compare it to freestyle?
Well, I think one of the best ones, and again, I heard this, so do I have actual numbers? No, but it made sense to me. So when we were in Budapest for the championships, they sold out Greco in like an hour and 10 minutes. Sold the tournament out. And so, that's
and freestyle wasn't sold out. Is that right?
Right. That's what my understanding was. And that made sense to me because of how much they love Greco there.
Yeah.
And the deal is that that's like a Garth Brooks concert in America.
Yeah. Like Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's going to be there. And the ticket's going to go on and it's done. And so that's the misnomer, right? I mean, because in America, right, scholastic college wrestling. I mean, that is, when we bring UWW officials over sometimes, one of the things that Rich and other leaders of USA Wrestling, they get them tickets to go to St. Louis to the NCAAs. And they're blown away by it. I mean, it's an amazing thing when the crowd's there and great wrestling this year, but boy, did we miss the crowd too, right?
Yeah, so, well, I was here. Yeah, it was weird. Right. When you can hear the referees arguing with the coaches, that's a little odd. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy I was retired then from that point. Right?
Yeah, not retired, just change lanes.
Well, yeah. But no longer doing that. So but so it's and when you see, like, I mentored a women's national team coach from Hungary, and she's Italian, but she was telling me that one of her problems with starting the women's program there was that many of her athletes that she's getting is coming through Greco-Roman clubs. And then they show up to her and then she has to get them to shoot on legs and do all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there just blown away by the thought of that. And then her idea was, what they did was they started paying the Greco-Roman coaches to come to a camp that she was running so that they could learn more freestyle techniques. And I thought, man, the world's upside down right there, right?
Yeah.
What we live, right?
Yeah.
But then right after college, collegiate wrestling, then we have men's freestyle and women's freestyle. And right there, I mean, and women's freestyle, I mean, it's doing nothing but just multiplying on top of itself each time.
Anybody who's still in the dark ages that doesn't, wasn't for women's wrestling is saving wrestling, period.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Right?
So anybody who's chauvinistic or misogynistic or whatever it is, needs to open their eyes, because not only is it saving us, but it's actually really high level wrestling.
Right.
Like, I mean,
I live in a house with my wife who loves announcing that, and she is all into it. And then you put the fact that we've got 3 daughters, and I wish it would have been like this when they were growing up.
Sure. So well, like that foot sweep Helen Marula's hit, that's not good technique for a girl or woman. That's just phenomenal technique, period.
Phenomenal technique for a wrestler. Right?
Yeah. In the most clutch moment.
And against a
super high level
opponent, right? I mean, a great opponent. And so that's what it's about, right?
Yeah. So I have my theories on why Greco isn't more popular here in America. And full disclosure, I'm a Greco guy. Like, you actually sat in my corner with my dad 100 years ago. I think I was the first or second guy from Missouri to win cadets in Greco, got O-dub. Again, that we wrestled in dirt back then.
Ricky and you, and yeah,
I was a few years before Ricky.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and the Perlers and those guys.
Perlers, yep.
So I'm a Greco guy, but I want to hear yours on why Greco's popularity, good or bad, is where it is.
Well, I think that the most obvious part of it is just the mere fact that the attack of legs, and if we do that, so one of the things that we did just recently was I broke down about 3 or 4 really high level freestyle clinic workshop type deals. And then I just broke down how many things we cover in Greco doing that. And it was 66 to 71% of everything that was on that sheet. But yet, when it comes down to those leg attacks and how sophisticated leg attacks and offensive countering to leg attacks to score off of that shot being taken, there's several points where, depending on what tournament you're looking at, folk or freestyle was, that the go behind is the number one scoring action, right?
Yeah. And now it's that back hamstring pull. There's no longer head in the hole. That's evolved. But yeah.
Right. Because everybody keeps getting, the coaching it does nothing but go up, and the athletes and how young they start and those kind of things. So I think that's the main area right there. So one of the things we're trying to do in Grit is take the points of transition. What can we transition from into? Because like this weekend, we're going to have an awful lot of athletes go both styles, because that's the only way you can get on Pan Am.
Yeah.
Is you have to go both styles to get the numbers, right?
Yeah.
And so that point in it is one of those deals where if we can keep a dual pathway for a little bit longer and then let them make a choice at some point, we feel we can get more traction in that area. So
this is my theory.
Okay.
My theory is this, that most kids, I would say boys, because there's no women's Greco right now.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to get to that too. But most boys, when they grow up, their parents especially, they want them to get a scholarship to college to wrestle. Okay. Right. And coaches, the number one tournament you can win to get a scholarship is Fargo your junior year. In freestyle, you could pin your way through Greco and you're not getting a full ride. I mean, just period. Like if you do that and go 0-2 in freestyle, you're not getting money. If you go 9-0 in freestyle and 0-2 in Greco, you're getting a full ride. And I think that because those schools, that's where everything is like, I want to wrestle for, and I'm not going to exclude anybody, but name the top 20 teams in the country. That's where I want to wrestle. They're not recruiting Greco guys. And they're not recruiting Greco guys because in their mind, if you can't grab and defend legs, then you're not going to win. And I can't spend recruiting dollars on guys that aren't going to win. I'm not saying that's true or false, that second part, but I recruited for a long time.
Sure.
And I know if somebody couldn't defend their legs, I'm like, well, okay, like,
You love Greco and you were a college coach. So yeah, I get
yeah.
that. So
And
it makes
so,
the argument very viable.
yeah.
My counter to that, coach, would be that check out either week 3 or 4 of Big Ten duels this year. There's 3 different times where Greco guys that have a lot of Greco accolades and freestyle as well, but both of them, and they won duels for their universities.
Oh, I get it. Like Peyton Omania,
Back
against Door,
and
those
get
kind
back.
of matches. Yeah.
Yes.
But the problem is then Peyton Omania doesn't go medal at NCAAs, right? And that's the problem, right? He's not hitting 3 headlocks. Because if you thought as a coach, that guy could take 8 and get 3 pins and score me 12 team points.
There you
If
go.
I get 10 of those guys, I'm
You're
getting a team trophy.
You're
And I don't even have to dress up for the finals. Like we're already good, right? So I'm not saying that theory like is valid, but I'm
No.
telling you that's the perception.
Sure.
And then I see like you guys and the people before you, because I know you're quick to give credit to the people that came in before you developing Greco.
Absolutely.
But we as a country, not we like I have something to do with it, but we USA Wrestling is doing a great job of cadets and juniors winning world medals at the Greco level. But then there's this gap. Like, Savion Severato is one of our guys, right? Here in St. Louis, and was the alternate and then made the team and made the finals, right? Then he goes to college and he doesn't do any Greco because they don't want him doing Greco. I mean, just period. Like, hey, your job is to grab legs and stop guys from grabbing your legs and score so you can start and be an All-American for us. So, and I love Savion, but I actually think he got worse in Greco because if you don't do something by any measure, any metric, you stop doing something for a while. If I don't tie a tie for 6 months, I'm not going to be as fast at tying it as I was when I was doing it every day.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think until somehow that paradigm changes, you guys, it's always going to be an uphill battle.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So one of my questions was, well, I guess one last question on that. So how do we get, so this is what's interesting to me. I believe this. I believe to be elite, you have to have an insane belief in yourself that nobody else has. Like I was talking to somebody like, it's crazy to me that when I was 15, I thought I can win nationals. And actually we were supposed to go to Colombia, South America, and we boycotted because of all the narco stuff, which was in hindsight, probably a good decision, but would have been cool to go there and represent our country. And I had a dad that was an amazing coach and a mom that was amazing on the mental side. But to even with all that, to think you can be the best guy in America and maybe the best guy in the world at 15 is kind of crazy. Like you have to sort of be slightly positively insane to think these kind of things. So what's happening is like, to me, the guys that are like number 8 on the ladder in freestyle, that most of us go, there's no way that guy's making the team. Right. But then the Jaden Coxes and the Frank Molinaros of 2016 happen, which buoys that belief. You don't have to be seated that high to make it.
Right.
If you guys could get those 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys, a couple of them to move over to Greco, like I looked at the freestyle team this year. Everybody won multiple national titles except for Gilman.
Right.
Okay. And he beat guys, I mean, that was the only weight where like there wasn't a bunch of national titles in that weight. I think Gross might have been the only one. I'd have to go back and do my research, but everybody else, Oliver, multiple nationals, Burroughs, multiple nationals, Taylor, multiple nationals, Snyder, and Gable. And Gable's got 1, but he's got 2 years left. I mean, I think safe to say he might win another one if he sticks around. Greco, we had a guy that didn't place at state his senior year make the team.
Right.
Which is an awesome story. And I love John Stefanowicz. I actually did play-by-play with him. He's an awesome human being and serves our country.
Absolutely.
But frankly, you want these guys that have won national titles to be on the Greco team too. So how do you start getting some of those guys?
Well, in 2018, we attempted to, in 2017, we attempted to move some of our athletes by hosting a different timetable from freestyle to get some guys to transfer over to give themselves another shot at it, right?
Yeah.
Again, it was met for different reasons, right? But like a lot of things, anytime you change something in the way that it's been done in the past, you're going to take, pushback on it.
Yeah.
Because everybody's very competitive. And so I don't know if we gave it enough time, because it's just like, I remember the first golf tournament we ever threw to try to raise money with my old high school team. I mean, I think we won. I think we made like $4,100, but from that point on, we doubled that or tripled that. I mean, we never had it. And so it's like a lot of things. The first time you try something, it's like a startup. It's hard.
Yeah.
But what we've got to do is we got to find different. So one of the things we're looking at with Grit and with our total Greco program, myself, Coach Lindland, everyone, is what does the pathway look like to get athletes into a pathway that would service their ability to get, like you're saying, more competitions, more training, but it puts them that direction. But the other
guys with bigger credentials. I mean, frankly.
And then the other side is the pipeline. What is it that the coaches are looking for enough that maybe we could get more traction on the other side? I mean, most of the challenges that we're facing in Greco tend to be pretty wide, varied, and global. And the only way that we're going to match that is we've got to find differentiating solutions to multiple problems that tend to be global, and then push forward. One thing isn't going to fix this, right? It can't be one.
There's no magic wand, right?
No, and we're going to have to. And there's no hack either. There's no shortcut. We're going to have to roll our sleeves up, dig our heels in like we can do, and then start working harder and harder to bring more guys to it to start with. If we can build our depth below, we stand a greater chance of either somebody breaking out and just going the Greco route, which is really hard to do. Because like you said, every parent in America wants an education for their child. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing we do.
Yeah.
Is educate.
Yeah. And that's not a bad goal. That's a good goal.
No,
that's a good goal. Like you want your kids to be educated and you want to pay as little for it as possible because you've been paying entry fees and buying singlets and coaching fees and all this other stuff for years. Like I talked to one kid's dad, I go, if you just put all that in a college savings plan, you probably have enough to send them to an Ivy League school without a scholarship.
Right?
Yeah. But obviously wrestling has a ton of other benefits that come with it. Right. So, I mean, and we don't need to go down that path. No. So anyway,
lessons you can only get on a mat.
Yeah.
Right.
So you mentioned Greco-Roman for women. Is it in the future? If so, when? Oh, by the way, real quick, there is one magic wand, I think. It'll never happen.
Okay.
What if they change college wrestling to Greco? I think we'd be.
That's as close to the wand as you're ever going to get.
Yeah.
And
we
know that wand's not going to get made.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But because that's what we're facing with women right now. I mean, that right there that's the game changer right there. So, I don't know. I think your question is one on for what we need to do is do the best job we can do. I mean, it's just like, all coaching is based on control the controllables, right?
Yeah.
So we're not in control of that situation with what UWW will or will not do down the road with women's Greco. But what we do know is, like 2 years ago, Western states, they held that large Greco-Roman women's tournament. They had 9 different states, and they had like 149 or 170 athletes in it. It was crazy good. Yeah. And then when we started Grit, we found out from like Minnesota coaches that they were upset that they didn't know that was going on. And had they known, they would have taken a team. And we know coming out of Minnesota, there's going to be some great stuff.
Sure.
Anything Northern Plains is going to make great Greco.
Anything that the Paulson family's touching is probably going to be good.
Of course, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's those kind of things. So what we've got to do, I think, Coach, is that what we need to do is we need to be ready for whatever jump happens. And that means we need to be inclusionary right now with that. I mean, again, we say to male athletes, there are transferable skills here. The hand fighting skills, the head up, butt down, hands low, hips and elbows tight, the consequences that you pay in a throw is immediate. And your ability to defend that isn't during that. It's prior to it. And if you don't fix it then, I mean, you're in trouble. And so that applies no matter what, whether it's male or female, right?
Yeah.
And so for that reason alone, we should continue down the road of education and connecting and working together with them. And the
I
other thing
agree.
is, they're such a movable force. Like you said, they're saving our sport in many ways. And so, yeah.
For sure. The perception is different. Title IX is no longer a problem. I mean, there's a bunch of things on the business side of it that a lot of people don't think
Wow.
about, but I'm a business guy that happened to be pretty good at wrestling, and I look at it that way. I think another thing that people don't think about, and I know that maybe wrestling doesn't want to be associated with this, but Greco skills are probably just as important, if not more so, than freestyle in MMA.
Right.
Folk style is really important because you learn how to hold guys down and just learn how to be heavy. And like, I've done jujitsu for a while, and people are like, man, like your base feels stupid heavy. It's like, well, my dad was hitting double legs on me when I was 3 years old, so eventually you learn how to defend something, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I think Greco, like obviously, Randy Couture and I are friends and we do work together.
Yeah.
He's the one that sort of created dirty boxing and was out of a Greco stance. I mean, John Smith might be the GOAT, but that stance would get you kicked in the head in MMA, like those are just facts. It doesn't take away how amazing he was, but that's the wrong position for that sport. Where Greco, that upright stance, I'm sure you've talked to Linlin about it. I mean, he was obviously, an MMA guy.
He was, absolutely. That transfer him, and you talk about Randy and so many others that have made that jump across, or it's Chael or whoever it is.
Yeah.
And that you're right. And the other thing is that if you want to create rotation and lift, which is the two things you have to do in Greco, which directly transfers over to MMA, right?
Yeah.
And so, and having your shoulders up over your hips allows for greater liftability and rotation. And when we bend at the waist, we lessen that biomechanic.
Yeah, you lose your power, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I generally try not to be very controversial, but I'm going to ask you about one thing. And I've never argued with you, Coach. I have so much respect for you, but you and
I've never argued with you, I hope.
Well, we had a mild disagreement on the phone about a week ago. So about this subject. So I was doing the commentary on Mat 3. I'm going to read these because I wrote this down. Where Match 2 of Porter versus Walsh happened. It became clear to me with about 40 seconds left that both wrestlers and their coaches were all incorrect about who was winning and losing the match. When the match was over, Walsh thought he had won. Porter thought he had lost, when in fact, Porter was the winner. Now, to be fair, I'm going to tell everybody, you were very quick to defend the coaches on both sides and the athletes on both sides. And you correctly pointed out that the scoreboards were not the normal scoreboards, or they just didn't bother to put a dot up. And I don't really want to bore people with the details of when the challenge was. The way I remember criteria, and I actually called Danny Blackshear for about 45 minutes on that Monday before the trial, so I wouldn't sound like an idiot on the microphone. And it actually really was super helpful for this match because the third caution is not a point. It's just parterre. And all these things, if you don't coach this stuff full time, you don't know it. Right. So
best, worst, last.
Yeah, best, worst, last. That's exactly, best, worst, last, easiest way to remember. Yep. So I remember doing the commentary, and when Porter hit the 5, I said, unless something crazy happens, Porter wins all ties.
Right, sure.
Okay. So let me just say this as somebody who's got a lot of people in my life, some of them who are crazy wrestling junkies like you and me. Not the people like, oh, that's nice, you're on the microphone and I heard you for 5 minutes and then I went and got a sandwich kind of thing, It's a bad look when nobody in it knows who's winning. Okay, like in football, we know who's winning. And all these other mainstream sports, we know who's winning.
Sure.
So besides putting the dot on the board, I guess I have 2 questions. 1, how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? And 2, how do really smart coaches and really smart athletes all get mixed up? Because I'm sitting in front of a monitor 200 feet away, and I got it right. And I'm always nervous when I feel like I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm like, I'm missing something. I'm never the smartest guy in the room.
Well, again, I go back to the fact that, I have worked with some of the very best officials in the country. And most officials will admit at some point in their career, 30 years plus, one of the things that Mr. McCormick used to always tell us, Pat McCormick would say right before we go out of the locker room, you've been officiating for 3 decades. Today, you're going to see something you've never seen before, because the athletes and the coaches are going to have new surprises for you. And they're going to do things that don't seem humanly possible, right?
Yeah.
So when you put that in context, and you know, again, I hope that everyone goes into battle with a plan. But we also know that adage that when you get hit in the face real hard, the plan tends to go out the window.
It's a Mike Tyson book. Yeah.
There you go. Right? and so there's so many things that took place in that match. And again, you already said it. We don't want to bore the audience by going back to that point, but I truly believe that there was a tremendous amount of chaos introduced into that part of it at a point where somebody did not take heed of that. I mean, at the end of the day, again, you just don't get better coaches than what was in those 2 corners in America.
Not arguing that. Not arguing.
No, you're not. And to your credit, you celebrated them well. I mean, you weren't on anybody.
No.
I got to believe that sometimes when you put this much on the line, and you've done this in a chair, and I know I've done it in a chair many times, and where you get so caught up in this is the moment for your athlete, we're not in control of it, but we're kind of riding the wave. And in the middle of riding the wave, when the chaos got there, something got lost in transition. What was crazy, like you bring up, is that it wasn't on one side.
No,
it was so different because it was on both. And if either one of them would have caught it early, then at that point, you got a situation where their actions and what they're doing looks so different that the other person goes, hold on a second, something's not right. And then that would have gotten recognized. But in this case, with what the wrestlers were doing, now, post facto, I found out that one of the coaches was like, wait a second, we are, but.
Wait, the coach on the winning side or the losing side had it right?
I'm going to leave that alone because I don't want to implement something there, but I just, because.
Okay. So, but one side, you're saying one
part of the one side thought
either Porter's coach knew one of them knew he was winning, or Walsh's coach, one of them knew he was losing. Is that correct?
So, right. Okay. So said that to me. And so it was like, if that's the case, and this person's not going to, you know, for me, one of the things that just as a high school coach, we always wanted to be deadly with a front head hold, down block on head hold, because what happens is you shoot on me, I down block, do a go behind, and then second period, I cut you loose or whatever, and I down block you and go behind. And now we get in the third period, and I'm winning by 1 maybe, and the other coach is yelling, Billy, you have to shoot. And Billy doesn't shoot. Billy accepts the loss. And
he's got no other offense because you beat him at his best position. Yeah.
Going back 2,600 years ago, it's the thought of you win the battle before it's fought.
Sure.
And so in this case, but how much of a gamble is that, right?
Well, I'm not going to ask you to implicate anyone. Here's what I'm going to say. Clearly, it was Porter's side that knew they were winning, because if Walsh's side knew he was losing, they would throw a brick, if for no other reason, to say, by the way, you're losing. You got to score. Okay.
Right.
So I'm going to be, Einstein and say that. Okay. Right. When I figured it out was this: when they went parterre, okay, they warned Porter, he goes down. Walsh doesn't try to do anything. And the reason why he doesn't try to do anything is he doesn't want to get stepped over on a gut or pick him to his feet and gets rethrown or any of the 1,000 things that, maybe not 1,000, 34 things that can happen in Greco, okay, that are bad. And I'm literally in the mic going, he thinks he's winning. And then I watch Porter trying to score. I'm like, oh my God, he thinks he's losing.
Right.
Now, there was a bunch of this on Twitter, and I've got like 500 followers, so I'm by no reason, anything relevant. But the people on my Twitter were like, what if Porter had gone for like a YOLO throw and pinned himself?
Right.
And now it's match 3.
Right.
And maybe he doesn't win, and maybe he doesn't make the team. And conversely, look, let me say this. I coached a lot of years. You're coaching a lot of years. We don't bat 1,000 from the corner. Sometimes we yell the wrong thing. Sometimes we don't yell the thing we should have yelled that would have made a difference. Okay, so everybody's human. Everybody has a human error factor. But I said on the air, that's got to be a long flight home if you're in that blue corner as the coach, because I know how seriously you took the performance, the welfare of your athletes, and I know how much me and my father did. And if I had literally told a kid he was winning when he was losing, like if I got riding time mixed up the wrong way, or something, I don't know, some reasonable yet totally correctable error. So that's the micro of it. The macro of it is this: forget who's wrestling, forget who's in what corner, forget any of that stuff. We got to do better. And this covers freestyle too, where people know who's winning. Like, because if we're trying to bring new eyes to the sport, and what people don't think about is new eyes brings new money, and new money is what grows viability. And if people go, these guys don't even know who's winning, so why do you expect me to be interested in this? That's a hard argument.
Right.
So whether it's the underline or the dot, we got to do something, right?
None of that, I agree with that part of it. I mean, none of that I could disagree with in any way, because it is true. I mean, and part of that is just the nature of our sport, right? Yeah. When we come up with something that is best, worst, last, when we come up with something like that the common fan, like you said, you go to a baseball game, everybody knows who's winning.
Football,
and you know
basketball.
that it's a pretty simple game. You throw the ball, you hit the ball, you catch the ball. And so you can tell at any given time who's doing what, and you don't have to know a lot to be into it. And that provides fan base and also sponsorship, right?
Right.
So I agree wholeheartedly with that part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I know, I mean, again,
and all of us are responsible for that.
Yeah. So we have a lot of coaches that watch and listen to this, like on their drive to and from practice. So for the 14 people that don't know this, you were the coach at Oak Park High School in Kansas City, multiple state titles as teams, a bunch of 4-time champions, a bunch of just hammers, kids that went on and did really well in college. I mean, one of your kids now is coaching one of the best high school teams in the country with Dustin Brewer at Liberty. I helped them run the KC Duels event, and that team has lapped the field twice.
Absolutely.
And they're unbelievable. Him and Bricker Dixon and Kellen Laws, shout out to those guys doing an awesome job. So let's just say hypothetically you went back to coach in high school.
Right.
And I say this, establishing the criteria, you were already an elite high school coach. Okay. It's not like just fell off the back of the turnip truck. Okay. What have you learned during this time with USA Wrestling? If you said, I'm just going to quit and go coach high school again, what have you learned in terms of, you're probably the most efficient time management guy. I know, I joked with you off the air. You're the only guy that likes Google Sheets more than I do. So I remember you saying to me one time, we don't ever run. Like, we don't do any running to warm up. And we figured out how many extra hours of wrestling we got in because of that. And I remember that literally. But what have you learned in the last couple of years that if you were playing advisor or mentor for the next couple of minutes to a high school coach,
right?
What could you tell them?
Well, the biggest thing is, it's one thing to stand out in front of your troops and tell them that they could be greater than they currently are. But in the information age that we're in right now, we need to go beyond that part of it. It amazes me, like, just recently we did a workshop and we brought 9 different states in. It was from Maryland and Colorado on the east-west. And then it literally was from Minnesota or Wisconsin down to Texas. And so we brought them all into the center of the United States. And then we had 63 athletes in a room. Well, when it was done, there was 4 people that stopped me that day, and then 4 more that called me within the next 48 hours. And it was all the same conversation, Coach. It was, hey, I worked out with Nick Bazakis, and Nick did a great job with his training partners and everything that he worked with. Right. And some of these athletes were like, man, do you think I could do this? And it's one thing for us to stand in front of our athletes and say, boy, I think you could do this. I really do. Well, then you better hope that if you take them to the world team trials, that they're not 1 and done or 2 and done, and right? Because then you're going to lose credibility immediately.
There's
But
no
one of the
buy-in.
things I've learned is that we can create some training environments that culturally will do a better job than that. And sometimes it's by putting them into training. That hammer is not trying to break out the biggest hammer that they own. Now, if you take them on in a tournament, they're going to break out their big hammer and they're going to hit you with it, right?
I always call them t-shirt guys and singlet guys.
Okay.
Like, and anybody who's ever coached knows that. There's like Monday through Friday guys and there's Saturday guys. Like,
right.
I coached Duran Wynn, and that guy was a singlet guy. Like, he would get beat in practice every day. But it was because he was trying stuff. I mean that as a compliment.
There you go.
He didn't keep score. He was always trying new stuff. He didn't care if he lost then, because he had as much self-confidence as anybody I've ever coached. That you find, I always say, find the biggest, brightest light you can shine on that kid. And whatever I'm legally allowed to bet, I'll put on him.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I've been so fortunate to do in the last 4 years with USA Wrestling is I've been a part of cohort education with the USOPC. And so, you know, you talk about continuing ed, they live it. I mean, they offer so much to us. I was in a course 2 days ago, and again, it's reiterated all the time, but you brought it up, is that if we can get athletes, and again, these are just raw numbers that was thrown out in one of these courses, but if we can get people failing 17 to 34% on a regular basis, that's where they determine real growth to take place in.
That's interesting.
So many people are constantly trying to be perfectionist, and it's not perfection. It's about the process and gaining the process and making those mistakes. And you take a Duran Wynn who is trying stuff all the time. We had a video of Roman Vasilov, right? Greatest maybe currently in Greco-Roman wrestling. And this man, he's trying a reverse lift. He's working it in practice with his partner. And some of the coaches made comments like, he's not very good at that. And I'm thinking, okay, that's true. But the neat thing about this guy is the reason why he wins so much, he does 3 things on top, and each of the 3 will score. But if you stop it, it promotes the other score.
One transition.
All linked, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he does 3 things, and we know the 3 things he does. It's like knowing John Smith owns a single leg, a low single.
Right.
But
low single, high CD.
Stopping it. And so, you know, KJ with a double. I mean, everybody knows he's got it, but, you know, Jordan Burroughs. But at the same point in time, we know that Roman Vasilov, he's going to attack you below your elbow on your feet, and he's going to do these 3 bad things to you when he gets on top.
3 bad things.
You got to figure out, you know, how do I fight a Hydra? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a multi-headed animal that I stopped 2 of his heads, and the 3rd or 4th one got me because they're attacking at the same time. And so when you look at something like that, making those mistakes in practice and then getting through it, that's how you're learning how to fight the Hydra. So I absolutely agree with those kinds of things, but that's another one of those areas that I would definitely look at it differently now. Right. And then just how much film. I mean, you know, I had somebody tell me here just in the last 2 weeks that, well, we just don't have Greco in my area. And I'm like, okay.
You got YouTube, you got track, you got flow, you got yeah.
I mean, at this point, I mean, if you have a computer, you have Greco, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
well, we got about 1 minute, and I always try to wrap it up. So I love the idea that the percentage of failure. I wrote that down. You're the only guy I've ever had that quoted Mike Tyson, Sun Tzu, and League of Their Own, all in 44 minutes, Coach. So really well done. And tell Dort, I know how much she loves her parents, but she has to be nice to me too. Okay. Right. She has to be nice to me too. I can be 3rd, but she can't beat me up too much. Okay.
I don't know that there's a bigger fan for 2 great people, which are your parents, than my wife and myself. I mean,
sure.
It goes with that saying, and the state of Missouri, the Midwest, the nation. I mean, they owe a great debt to your parents. And so
do I.
I've often said maybe it would be great if all of us were raised by such heroes, right?
Yeah, for
sure. The world would be better.
That's a great way to end it. We want to thank everybody for watching, listening, and sharing. I'll talk to you all next week.